Welcome to Coastal Voices, the show that brings you stories about life on Hatteras Island. This is Susan West, your host for the evening. The stories you'll hear tonight capture the spirit of people from Rodanthe to Hatteras Village. The storytellers come from all walks of life, and topics include everything from childhood memories to fish tales, community traditions to big storms, hard work to daring adventures. The stories are from recordings collected by local volunteers in the Coastal Voices Oral History Project. You'll meet some of those volunteers in the show tonight. To learn more about the project, please visit our website at carolinacoastalvoices.com. Roy Gray talks about visiting Big Kinnikeet Life-Saving Station when his father was stationed there. Mr. Gray was interviewed at his home in Frisco by Amy Glass for the Southern Oral History Program in 1988. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
My father was also a member of the Coast Guard. We served in the Coast Guard, I think, over 30 years, life-saving service. He was stationed at Big Kinnikeet. Quite frequently we'd go to the station down and visit, and one of the servicemen there would, if we needed a haircut, they were the barbers.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And I remember this too, when this one fellow, Mr. Eugene Gray, which isn't related to me, after he would get through cutting your hair, he had what we call a foxtail brush, you know, with a handle, and he'd whack you on the head with it.
Oh.
Not hard, but
Send you on your way.
send you on your way. There was I think there was 2 or 3 buildings right adjacent to the life-saving station where families lived, and we lived there for quite a while, and my daddy was a surfman.
Do you remember his number and his duties and all?
I don't remember his number, but his duty was the duty of the whatever came up, you know, and the rescue work and the upkeep of the stations. And at that time they didn't have tractors to begin with, and trucks to pull their boats with. They had horses, and the horse stable was right adjacent to the station. And we boys when we didn't have anything else much to do, we'd go down there and feed the sparrows, which were very numerous, because that's where they got their food from, was the corn and oats, and we'd sometimes we'd throw the corn at the birds, scattered it around, and probably some of the crewmen there come chase us off, but they never harmed us. Had 2 horses, and they're 2 tremendous horses. They were they called them, I don't know what breed they were, but they called them government horses. I remember that. Tremendous horses, powerful. And those lifeboats, they didn't have the balloon tars. They had, you know, the cart wheels, and they could pull those carts through the sand to whatever point they needed to get. Of course, eventually, I guess they got trucks.
Some people are just meant to relocate their permanent home to Buxton, North Carolina. Betty and Bruce Pritchard, in an interview with Sandy Jones Garrison on February 19, 2014, discuss why they chose Buxton. In this interview, they mentioned their current neighbors, the Perry and the Pratt families.
We went to pick up the real estate agent, and she showed us a couple properties, and they didn't do much for me. And when we turned onto Flowers Ridge Road, just as we turned off the Lighthouse Road, now remember, I've only lived in 2 houses in my whole life. As we turned onto the road, I said, oh, this feels like home. And before we got to the property, Bruce said, I forgot to tell you there's a graveyard, you know, on the property. And I said, doesn't make a difference. It was a completely wooded lot, and we walked the lot, and I liked it. I really liked it. I looked at the graveyards out in front, the names on the graveyard. It was an old lighthouse keeper. And Cheryl was leaving, so we said we'd get back to her. We were going to lunch. We went to lunch. We went down to the Lighthouse bookstore, and we opened up a book on lighthouses, and the page came open to the dead man in our front yard. And I said, I think we're buying a piece of property.
Fate and destiny. I got more to that story. A couple years ago, I did the genealogy of my family. I grew up in Cape May. I knew that my dad's family was from down here. Not here, from down south. And so I started digging into genealogy, and it turns out that our family settled Bertie County in the late 1600s. One of the original settlers in North Carolina.
And you didn't
And
know
I
that
never knew that.
until you moved here.
But
So
wait
it
a
was
minute.
kind of like a draw back
And
that
then
I never knew about.
the properties in Bertie County touch Perry's property.
Yes,
In Bertie
and I
County.
dug in further, and I found out my great-great-grandparents, no, the original ones in the 1600s, they had a plot, and they had joined a plot that turned out to be the Perrys, who live right across the street. And next to that property was the Mizels, who are in George's family. So the three families from the 1600s ended up adjoining properties here in Buxton.
Ruby Williams recalls her mother buying an oil-burning stove. Mrs. Williams was interviewed in 2002 by Jennifer Miller for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
We had this coal heater, and like coal noise, my mother would put these irons or a brick onto that heater and heat it up, and had a lot of like old rags or something like that to wrap that brick up into and put it to the foot of her bed under the covers, you know, and that would heat the bed up.
Oh, wow. Where did your mother do the cooking before there was electricity? Did she have a cook stove in the kitchen?
Well, she was the first one when Shank Austin, the Hatteras, he was a younger man, he went off someplace and got these oil burners. And they had, you could buy the oven to set onto them, you know, to put them on different burners. She went down there and got her one of them oil burners. It had a little glass jar into it that put oil into and set down at the end of it. And she got a 4-burner one. And she got this oven, and she put the oven on the 2 burners. And she baked her bread in that. Oh, it was a time everybody on Avon coming here looking at that stove.
Damon Gray talks about working in the porpoise factory in Hatteras Village in 1922 when he was 24 years old. Mr. Gray was interviewed by Marcia Lines in 1978 for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Cultural Resources Program. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
What I'd like to know about the local porpoise industry, first of all, what years you were doing it? Was the early 1900s?
I believe 22.
1922.
1922.
And was this the only place that they did it, just in Hatteras, or did they do it up in Frisco?
No, just one crew at Hatteras.
And
The
how many-
factory was here.
One factory and one crew. And how many people were in the crew?
About 18.
18. I thought it was less than that.
No.
I was thinking like 7 or 8.
Oh, no. I think twice 7 or 8 full of porpoise.
And you did this mostly in the wintertime or the, say, spring, summer, and fall?
Yes, did it in the spring.
Spring when most of the porpoise were around.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of porpoise then.
Okay. Can you describe exactly how you did it? You watched out on the beach for a school to come by?
Yes. We had a watchman half a mile from our main camp. The main camp had the boats and all.
The camp was right on the beach?
Yes. And these watchmen, there was one watchman just below the camp, and he watched, and then down the other way from the camp, there was another watch house, had a watchman, and he watched. And when he saw porpoises coming, why, he pulled a big branch of a tree up so we could see it. And then
he just waved the branch up?
He pulled that up on his pole that he had there. And then he started walking towards us with a branch, waving it, letting us know where the porpoise were away from the beach or close to the beach. And
would the branch have a flag or anything on it?
no, it's just a
branch.
tree
Okay.
branch.
I was,
And it was pretty big, big. We'd get out there and get set to come to the beach and set the net in the meantime, while when we were coming to the beach, while we were putting our net over. And after the porpoise got inside, when we got the porpoise inside this net, while we landed on the beach and went pulling our net in.
You went out with 2 boats?
Had 4 boats.
4 boats?
Yeah, we had 2 in the middle, and one of them would go one way and one the other. And then we had another, each way, there was another boat waiting, until we got the net to them.
So 2 would be out further in the water, waiting?
Yes, there'd be a boat here, and 2 boats here. And then, see, these 2 would be tied together. One would go here, and one would come here. And the one that was here, it would start for the beach, And when it got to the beach, we went pulling in. Now this, from here, maybe 100 yards offshore, just might be a line, tied to the net. A porpoise would come to that line, and somebody on the beach would kind of scrape their paddle on it or oar. Then we took another net, a heavy net, and went around in here along this neck. And those porpoise were in there.
So first you went out with a light net, and then encircled them with a heavy net right inside that light net.
And we just went pulling it in to get it in close enough that we could hook them in their freezer.
Well, you'd hook them in the blowhole and drag them onto shore?
That's right.
Well, I thought you pulled the whole net onto the beach. I suppose that's a lot of weight.
Well, we pulled it on until we could get out in the water and hook on. Yes, that's the way we...
And how many porpoise or dolphin would you get in a usual
Sometimes
haul?
we get 15, 16.
That'd be a good day?
Yeah, that's a good catch.
Now, once they're on the beach, what happens? Once they're pulled up on the beach, what happens?
Well, if we have time that day, we'll go skinning. That was our job, stabbing.
And the heart?
Stab them under their left fin, front fin.
And the products, they would use the blubber for oil?
Oh, yes, usually. Now, the lower jaw had the good blubber in it, You used to get $1,000 a barrel for that.
But you'd use the oil in other sections of the body, too?
Yes.
Not just the jaw?
No, used all the oil. And the body carcass, because that was tried for guano.
Uh-huh.
And
With
made a powder.
fertilizer. And did you ever use the hides
That's what we should have mostly.
for the hide?
Yeah.
Not for the oil, mostly for the hide.
Yes.
And what would you do with the hide?
The hide was used for belts, leather belts.
Belts for machines.
See, the hide on a fat porpoise would be that big, and then we trim it off first, not like a belt or anything, about that big, and it was really used.
So were you doing it, do you think, the last few years of the porpoise fishery, or after you left, did they still do it for many years?
It was here the owners died of.
In an interview in March 2013 with Liz Browning Fox, Calvin Dallas Burris Jr. remembers World War II growing up on Hatteras Island and stories he heard of World War I.
The beach was full of trash all the time. And I remember one time we went down towards the lighthouse. My dad was going to show me. He says the sub chaser has got a submarine caught up in the hook, and he had to, I guess, go down. But they were throwing depth charges, and you could see them going in the air.
Now, the sub chaser, was that a boat or a dirigible?
Yeah, it was. I guess it was Coast Guard or Navy.
Was the hook?
They call the point the hook.
Mm-hmm.
The
Cape
hook.
Point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen that picture? They took of the. Used to call it the hook. This picture they took from the air. Jarvis gave me one not long ago, and it's just the way the sand went and the way it was. It looks just like a hook,
Mm-hmm.
and it was remarkable. You don't see it very often, but it happens.
So the sub chaser chased the submarine
Well,
up in there?
I never did. We never did find out. Well, I know there was a lot of stuff that washed up, and a lot of times those subs will throw stuff out, to kind of think, well, kind of make the people above them. See that? That looks just like a hook.
Gosh, amazing.
They called it the hook, and that happens sometimes. I think that was see the cars on the beach.
Yeah, that's not long ago, is it?
No, it hasn't been too long ago. The aerial photograph. I don't know who took it.
Did you ever see the dirigibles, sub chasers out of Elizabeth City, out of the Weeksville station?
Yeah, you'd see them. I never saw any, explosions where they dropped bombs or whatever they did.
But
they
you'd
would
see
come
them
down.
offshore.
You'd see them. I guess that's what they were looking for.
Yeah, because they could see the subs from above.
Yeah. It was quite a place for the Germans. They seemed to be just stayed right out there until they come up with this, what was his name? They got a plaque for him. In other words, he started the aerial.
Billy Mitchell?
Billy Mitchell. Started the aerial bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of changed the Germans' minds.
So by the time you came along, bombing submarines was fairly well established.
Yeah.
But I guess they had trouble spotting them offshore during World War II because so many ships sunk before they got control here.
You could see them burning offshore. And then I remember Dad going out in the middle of the night saying there was a ship exploded. They went on the beach, I guess, and picked up bodies.
He was in the Coast Guard during World War II?
Yeah. Down in Hatteras, they had the gun club down there, where the old hospital is now. They called it the girls' club at that time, when I was young. They had that tennis court out front. We'd go there and play tennis and roller skate a little bit on that tennis court. There's a lot of things going on during the war, or before the war.
Mama said that she remembered a lifeboat washing up with gun holes down the side.
Yeah. Well, they said they remember. I'm talking about the light ship off here. All the crew got in a lifeboat, started rowing towards the beach, and they sunk that lightship. That's what I understand. Gentleman says, I don't know where they give them time to get off the boat or whatever, but I remember an old fella, he's been dead many years, but he remembers rowing, the crew rowing, all the way from where the lightship was. So a lot of stories, true stories.
Elizabeth O'Neill Howard of Ocracoke recalls the 1944 hurricane in an interview with Amy Glass for the Southern Oral History program. The interview was conducted in 1988. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
Have you had more? Yes, I have. I had 12 inches in this house. And it only lacked about 7 coming in Gloria.
When did you have 12 inches?
In the 44 hurricane.
Can you tell us about that storm?
What do you want to know about it?
Well, what was it like here? I'm trying to imagine what that would be like.
Well, that came up in the daytime, and the Navy was here, and they went around telling everybody there's going to be a hurricane. But we didn't put anything up in the old house where I lived, around the corner. And the water had never been in that house, and that house is 200 years old. And that's a high lot, much higher than mine. You wouldn't think that by just going by looking at it. But it had been there since Pop bought it in 1912. It had been there since the early I'll say maybe not the middle of 1900. I don't know how many years it had been on that lot. It was brought up from the sand side and put there. But anyway, there had never been any water in it until the 44 hurricane, and it was 5 inches in that.
Did they take up the floorboards?
No, it didn't take up anything. 5 inches came in, and it went out just fast as it came in. It left a lot of mud. It's a lot of work. I don't welcome it.
It comes from Silver Lake. It backs up from the sound.
Yeah, it came, well, in the 44 hurricane, the sound and the ocean met, I think, on this corner. Well, I came over here, I was staying in my mother's house then, and I came over here to see what it was like. I had rented this to Navy people. There's 2 parties in it. And when I came here, it was like the ghost ship. The only thing I saw was a table, a card table in the middle of the living room, and a cocktail shaker in the glasses. And it was 12 inches in this house. But of course it was that when I came here. But there was a lot of mud. And around the corner then, the water hadn't all ebbed off. And it cut the soles off. So I had on sandals, white sandals. And it cut the straps off the soles. That's how swift that current was on that corner. And that's when I said the ocean met sound.
In an interview with Susan West, Dallas Miller of Avon talks about the schools in Avon and Buxton and recalls the Ash Wednesday storm.
Well, I started school here in Avon.
Well, where was that?
You know where the Sands of Time campground is?
Yeah, on the North End Road?
Yeah, it was right there. I think I went to the 6th grade and started in the 7th grade down to Buxton.
When they consolidated?
Yes, when they consolidated.
And they got rid of the school?
Yes. The first room had the 1st through the 4th grade. The second one had the 5th through the 8th.
Okay.
In the 9th grade, you went to Buxton, down where the electric plant is now. In the 9th grade, you went there. That was the high school. After you went to the 8th grade up here, then you went 9th through 12th down to Buxton. My brother graduated out of Buxton, that one.
So, do you remember how many teachers were there at that school?
2. One was for the 1st through the 4th grade, and when I was there, her name was Miss Parks. Then the 5th through the 8th grade, I can't remember his name, but he was also the principal. So that was the only 2.
Remember?
You had one row of desk was the 1st grade, the 2nd row was the 2nd grade, 3rd row was 4th grade, 3rd grade.
Do you have any idea how many kids, how many students were there?
Well, in my class, I could probably name all of them. I was the only boy.
Oh, really?
There was probably, I'm guessing, 6 or 8 in my class.
When it was time to go to Buxton to go to school, was
I was
that...
scared to death.
You were?
Yes.
I was going to ask if that was something that made you nervous,
Yes.
like you were...
Yeah, I, being used to this school, where you had, you know, one schoolroom, and you had the auditorium and the other schoolroom. Then going down to this one, it was only, you walked in, you walked to the left, there's some classrooms, and you turned and walked down the hall to the right, and there's classrooms. That's all they were, besides the auditorium and the cafeteria. And I thought, oh, I'm never going to learn my way around here. But yeah, it was comical. Yeah, scared to death. Mr. Mercer was my first teacher down there.
Did you eventually like it?
Oh yeah. Because I just met, there's so many more people you met, and started hanging around with mostly people from Hatteras, really. In fact, when they had in '62, when the inlet cut through right outside of Buxton, I was driving the school bus that year. I was a senior. Yeah, seniors drove school buses. I made $42 a month. Some people, they converted the Little Kennebec Coast Guard Station into a school. So some people went there to the school, and then others stayed with friends or family they had in Buxton or Hatteras or Frisco. And I stayed in Hatteras with a friend of mine. In fact, he just passed away, Charles Brown. It was Charles Brown's mom and dad.
Okay.
Because his mother was a teacher up there, Hilda Brown.
Do you remember that storm, that Ash Wednesday storm?
Oh yeah, very well. I left. I don't remember it being bad. In fact, I took the bus. I was up on North End Road living with my dad and mom, and I picked up all the kids that morning. Was on my way out to the main road to head for school, and someone stopped me at the corner. We come out of the village. Asked me where I was going. I said, I'm going to school like I do every day. And they says, no, you can't get south of Big Kennebec Station. I said, what are you talking about?
Oh my goodness.
I said, well, it's sand. And then on the other side of the sand is an inlet. I said, oh yeah, right. And I left. I didn't believe them. I left and went down, and I got on the other side, and there's nothing but sand.
Wow.
So I took everybody and I went back. I called the principal, Byram Jerome Salter was the principal. And I said, Mr. Salter, this is Dallas. I said, I can't get to school. He says, why not? I said, there's an inlet cut through. Well, he didn't believe me. He says, I'll call you back. I said, okay. Evidently he left, went up and saw there was an inlet there, and he calls me and he says, oh, there are an inlet. I says, yeah. So then they, like I say, they opened up the school at Little Kennebec, and then they had, then people stayed with people in, Buxton, Frisco, and Hatteras, and I stayed with Charles in Hatteras. And they ran ferries. In fact, my dad ran one of them from Hatteras Inlet to Avon Harbor. On Friday, after school, I would go down to Hatteras and catch the ferry and ride it and stay home for the weekend. And then Sunday night, I'd go back on the ferry and stay the week down there.
How long was that inlet there? Do you remember?
No, I don't. I know they put the temporary bridge across there. Sometimes if the sea was rough and the tide was high, you would have to wait on one side of the bridge until the water washed across it and then go across.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah. Coastal Voices thanks the storytellers, the community oral historians, and Radio Hatteras for their support. And we thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.